Hey guys, and welcome back to ScarletSprites. A little bit of semi-Neo Geo related news came out yesterday. Most of you are familiar with Viewpoint for the Neo Geo. It's a cool, albeit very difficult shooter for the Neo Geo that came out in '92. It saw ports for a few other platforms, most notably the Sega Genesis, and then an overhauled version for the Sony PlayStation. Obviously, the game became well known for its unique perspective, or viewpoint. Although the gameplay is pretty solid, I've personally always loved the soundtrack, and it offered a pretty solid challenge to players at the time. And I'm probably underselling that. This is a hard game. I've never been able to beat this title organically, which is why it still has not popped up on my Neo Geo Alpha to Z series to this day. The developer Sammy had planned to release a sequel for Viewpoint on the Nintendo 64, but it ended up being cancelled. When I was looking into Viewpoint for the Alpha to Z series, I saw that a prototype had been rumored to appear a few years ago, but then there was no known dump of the game until this past weekend. I obviously want to give full credit to Gaming Alexandria for getting this game out, and I will link their original article in the video description. Definitely check it out. It does a nice job covering the known history of this series. I also want to thank SmokeMonster for bringing this to even more people's attention, and he too has a write-up on the game, which I will also link. So let's get to the actual game. This is Viewpoint 2064, which is most likely what you came to see. I downloaded the ROM for this and copied it over to my EverDrive so I could play this on original hardware. As SmokeMonster notes, there is also some text that is needed to be added to the saved database text file, so make sure you do that if you're going to go this route. Otherwise, you're going to struggle a little bit. The capture here is 1080p output from my N64's Ultra HDMI. In the options menu, you have the ability to change a few things, including the number of lives. I always found that really interesting, like just give me the full amount. I always upped it on Contra 3 as well when I used to play that as a kid. If I want to self-regulate myself and turn the game off, I will. Just give me the full amount from the beginning. I don't know why that is being controlled by the developer. If 7 is an option, just give me 7. The first thing I noticed right away is that you have this ability to lock onto targets up to 8 at a time by holding down the A button. You can see the lock-on meter there in the bottom left that will track how many things you currently have locked onto. The red meter, or shield as it is called, is essentially your health. No surprises there. When that runs out, you are toast, just like you'd expect. The energy bar below is interesting and wasn't quite as obvious to me in the first 15 minutes of playing. It definitely would have helped to have read the Gaming Alexandria article I referenced earlier, but hey, I just wanted to be reckless and play this. The energy bar charges as you absorb fire from enemies, and when it is full and you tap B, you can release a more powerful blast. So how do you absorb fire, you might ask? By using the options noted on the bottom right. There are 3 variations that I saw when playing, and once again, I'll defer to Gaming Alexandria, who refer to them as Fire, Lightning, and Blizzard. And it's interesting because when I first started playing the game, I noticed I wasn't dying or taking any damage, and I just chalked that up to this being a prototype, and I went about my business enjoying what I could. I was only partly correct in that assessment, however. It seems as though if you pick up the Blizzard option, it renders you invincible. Now, I'm sure that that's not how the game would have shipped, and that's likely just something that is unfortunately unfinished at this time. The fire and lightning options seem to work as intended though, and they change your shot and are able to absorb the fire. I found this out the hard way when I relaxed a little later in a level thinking I was invincible and was just taking in the scenery, and then ended up having my ass handed to me out of seemingly nowhere. It wasn't random though, it was because I had started with the Blizzard power-up and then unassumingly switched off to a different option. Overall, this is a pretty cool game and experience, even if it does feel a little unfinished. There are things you can kind of sense when playing that give the vibe that this is a prototype cart, particularly the invincibility thing I just mentioned, as well as some levels where you just end up flying through terrain for long periods of time without seeing any enemies. And it's as though those levels, they just aren't completely done, which is to be expected. It's also difficult to tell graphically what would have been improved on, if anything. Overall, things look pretty good, but are of course subjected to that classic N64 appearance, which in my opinion, just really hasn't gotten any better with age. As far as maneuvering the ship around and general gameplay, I'd kind of equate this to the love child of a poor man's Star Fox and Total Eclipse on the 3DO. Kind of hope that makes sense for those of you who don't have the option to play this one. For anyone who is a Neo Geo fan though, I think it's worth checking this out to experience what the sequel for one of the system's toughest shooters of all time would have been like. It's a rare treat that I don't think most of us would have thought we'd have the opportunity to play. That's it for this weekend, guys. Thanks so much for stopping by yet again. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you all next time. Later, guys.